Welcome to Stuck, Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Ref, and I want startups to be wildly successful. Today, we're going to be talking about how to pitch to investors, and we're talking with Orly Zeewy from Zeewy Brands. Thanks so much for coming, Orly.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation, Mary.
Definitely. Investors are something that startups are always asking for, because you ask a startup, what do they need today? And they always say money. And it's not always the actual truth. It's not always what they really need, but that's what they say. And what should we know about investors before we get in front of them?
Well, first of all, let me just back up a couple steps. You have to understand that there's two types. There's the VC, the venture capitalist, and then there's angel investors, and that's the seed money. So depending on where you are in your startup, one or the other would make sense. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that whenever you work with an investor, two things: they expect a return on their money, and they expect it to be bigger than what they invested. But
so let's talk about that first, the first kind of investment that people should be going for and how they should be asking for that.
One of the things that founders often forget is how much money they're going to need to launch. And, running out of money is the number 3 reason that startups fail. Before you even think about talking to anyone about investing, you need to hit the 3 things, the 3 P's that I'm going to talk to you about in a moment here. The first is passion, the second is purpose, and the third is profit. So in terms of passion, if you're not passionate, if you're not excited about presenting your idea, your company, and all the amazing things that you're going to be doing and are able to do, why should they, right? The investors want to see, they're investing, they're not investing in a company, they're investing in you. So you need to be fully vested and fully excited and really show that excitement, that passion. The purpose piece is you need to show that you are solving a real problem for a real person, and using story. This is where storytelling really comes into play. That storytelling, using stories to tell this is such a great tool, because storytelling will help investors understand both the problem and its impact on the target market and why you're the person to solve it. And then the last piece of profit. Now, when you're just starting out, you may not have any profit. So you need to show that you understand what it takes to run your business, what it takes to acquire your first client, and what it's going to take to scale. So all of those things are really, really important, because you have to show proof of concept. So to do that, focus on a small market. And maybe it's just your neighborhood, maybe it's your city, but you want to show that you've done the research. That's a big part of it. Is investors like to see that you've really put the time and the effort to understand who that target market is, what the size of it is. Take a look at your competitive landscape. You can do a SWOT analysis, and really, so you can really understand what's your competitive edge.
Right. People need to know where you are in your current ecosystem. Exactly. So that who your actual competition is and how big your actual market is. You don't look at, there are 8 billion people in the world and they all use cell phones. No, it's not your market. So let's talk about pitch decks and how many slides and what kinds of information needs to be there, depending on how long you have to pitch.
Kind of the average, I would say, is 15 slides, 10 minutes. And you have to have a title slide, and you have to have an ending slide. And in between, you want to tell your story. And sometimes, there are a couple of ways you can do that. Like just with any story, you can start with the end. Like this is, or you can start with the problem, or you can start with the solution, or you can start with what that looks like. And so I'm trying to think of a good example. So this is one of my students who was doing something around food waste, and they talked about, they're trying to get people to be more sustainable and look at compostable waste, and they're hoping to convince municipalities to invest in this, right? Because what we don't realize, and this is where he started his deck, what we don't realize is that compostable waste releases,
Greenhouse gases, yeah.
exactly. So, and we don't think about that, right? So if it's not going composting your garden, then you want to think about, so already you've got an impact, same with fashion. I've had students who looked at, landfills and what does that look like? And, when you recycle things or when you repurpose things, right? So right from the beginning, they're showing you what the problem is and the impact that it has, either on the environment or on a particular group of people, or, just somehow you need to show cause and effect. And then you tell your story from the perspective of the impact that it would have on this person. So what would it look like if, you had somebody, if your municipality would pick up your compostable waste? What could that look like? How would that impact your life somehow? And so once you show all that, then you have one slide that has projected revenue, right? That would show somebody, maybe another slide could be on the competitive landscape. You might do, again, a SWOT analysis, or you might just talk about what have people been doing and how is this different? Think about this, again, if you're thinking about this from the perspective of the person and not from your perspective, right? I mean, I know it's your pitch deck, but the goal is to get somebody to go, wow, this is a real problem. The solution is amazing, and it's going to impact, you can look at projected, right? Like how much would it save the city if they didn't have to have all this extra trash to haul, right? Those are the kinds of things you want to
The other thing people need to pay attention to is that your investor isn't necessarily your customer.
Oh,
so if you're talking a pitch to potential customers, your emphasis may be something different. And I always tell people no more than 5 lines on or 3 lines on a slide and 5 words in a line. And they're supposed to jog you into being able to talk and not be something that people are reading while you're talking.
That's such an excellent point. There's that whole thing about death by PowerPoint. And I think what people tend to do is they throw everything on a slide and then they read it, and that is the absolute opposite of what you should be doing. Using a lot of images really helps, because our brains process images much, much faster than they do words, because words have to be read in sequential order, whereas images can, our synapses are going off and it's much easier to process. So using more images, use colors sparingly. The other thing I talk about is, be careful not to have, 20 bullets on a slide, usually, no more than 5. There's also some standards in terms of how big your type should be, your fonts, 18 to 24, maybe 36.
And ultimately, you want to draw them in and get them to ask you questions. You can have slides available that you don't show in your major presentation, so you wait for that question to show up. Because the more questions an investor asks, the more likely they are to actually write you a check.
That's the big gift, right? Because you need to be also thinking of all the potential questions that they're going to ask. And if you are able to answer them fully, and that shows that you really understand your material. And then the other thing I was going to say is that, investors are really looking to see, do you understand that this has value? Have you at least talked to people? Have you done, with my students, I have them actually go out and talk to people or do an online survey, get some initial feedback just to say, yes, I have this problem. Yes, I would be willing to pay for a solution to this problem, because just because you have a solution doesn't mean people are actually going to be willing to pay for it. Because if you don't practice, honestly, it should feel like it's just off the top of your head. It doesn't need to feel like it's practice, but it needs to feel genuine.
Well, thank you so much, Orly Zeewy. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff. I want startups to be wildly successful, and one of the best things you can do to get there is to book a synergy call with me at businessriff.com. And join us again next time for Stock Time to Improv.